afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the July 15th, 2022 edition of News from the Front Lines of Business by DW Huff Consulting, where we help you know your numbers so that you can grow your numbers. The week has passes by here, so we'll just recap some of the highlights from current events and some client conversations that we've already had in the course of the week. I guess first off is discussion of Social Security benefits. Client came in and they had a couple of years with no earnings, and in recent years they had some self-employment earnings, and they were questioning how much of an effect that would make on their Social Security benefit. They were actually, I guess the bad news is this client was kind of optimistic that these last 2 years of having to pay some self-employment tax was going to be helpful, and unfortunately it turns out that it's really not helpful. Because the reason, I guess the calculation is kind of complex, but I guess to begin with, it looks at your last 35 years of earnings, and it uses an inflation indexed calculation based on that. So it goes back all 35 years adjusted for inflation, and to figure out what to come up with an average annual earnings, which subsequently is used to calculate your average monthly earnings, and that goes into the calculation of your benefit. So 2 years out of 35 with some kind of small amount of earnings isn't really going to change things very much, unfortunately. But to I guess go into a little bit more to calculation, once you know your average indexed monthly earnings, then you go to another table and it calculates how much that results in your payments from Social Security and on your benefit checks. So the first $1,024 of earnings, they give you 90% of that. Anything between $1,025 and $6,172, you get 32% of that added in your monthly check, and then anything above that, 15%. So to kind of show you how that looks, they have this figure here where that national average annual earnings here is $55,628. So just so looking at that number here, that works out to $4,635 a month of a monthly indexed amount. So if you look at the math here, I'm a little table on the bottom. The first 1,024 at 90% equals $921, and the remainder, which is 3,611, gets multiplied by 32%, and that adds $1,155 to the benefit. So the total benefit in this worker's case is $2,077. So adjust it up or down for your own situation, but so it's not very lucrative, as we see. So in order to increase your benefit in any way, shape, or form, you got to be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in your last couple of years if you're trying to backload it to affect your benefits. There's really no way to really dramatically change it. So if you find yourself getting closer to retirement, kind of, in my opinion, what's done is done. And I guess if you have a couple of 0 years within those 35, maybe getting a positive number, you may see a couple dollars interest, but as you can see here, it's not very much, because you got to affect that monthly average, and it just takes a lot of money to make any kind of noticeable difference on it. So that's the bad news. Also, ERTC, so employee retention tax credit for our small business owners who have employees. We've seen hearing a lot of ads lately, television, radio, and whatnot, and you hear they throw around these big numbers to try and get people excited about this tax credit. So I've heard one ad mention his average credit was $200,000. So they're getting everybody kind of hyped up on this thing. And in a lot of cases, you don't even qualify for anything, because your typical small business probably has an owner, possibly a corporation on payroll, maybe some family members or related parties that don't qualify for it. So be careful. I mean, we have frequently asked questions on our website, and we can also walk you through the calculation really quickly to determine if there is any potential benefit. But a lot of times it's no benefit. And when they start touting these big numbers, but they'll say, oh, it could be 35,000 an employee. The 2020 flavor is only 5,000 per employee. The big dollars come on the 2021 rendition, and that one's a little tougher to qualify for, because not only do you have to be an unrelated party, PPC forgiveness comes into play. as well as a revenue drop comes into play. So depending on how things shook off your business, if you didn't lose money and not have PPP, a lot of factors kind of come into play here in order for you to really qualify for the big dollars. And so there definitely it's a case of being oversold something, and in a lot of cases going to be disappointed in how it's delivered. They usually charge some pretty big upfront fees, so beware. Reach out to us because we got a quickie analysis tool that we can go through for, and it won't cost you a lot of money to decide if you qualify, and if so, at least our fees are a little more reasonable, and we have a couple payment options for you. So be careful of those news, those advertisements that you're hearing. And also, it's kind of a recent development. So the RMD formulas have changed. RMD stands for required minimum distribution, and so that's pertains to a 401k and retirement accounts that have tax deferred amounts in them. They've been growing, and you got a tax break when you put them in. You got a tax break as they've been growing, and the IRS wants you at some point in your life to start taking the money out and paying tax before you die. So the way it was in the past, at 70 and a half, there was a beginning point there, and the process began with once you attain that age, look at the account value as of December 31st of the prior year, and then you would apply it against this amount in a table. So this table was accounting for life expectancy, and basically the idea is that you take a little bit out of a year, and theoretically it lasts you right until the day you die. But as time is going, people's life expectancy has increased. So those amounts haven't really been adjusted for anything, and that's something that they have done. So IRS is now contemplating that you're going to live a little bit longer, and because of that, they're going to have you taking out smaller required amounts. So not only did they change the beginning age to 72, because people are working longer as well, but also have updated the table so that the amount that goes into that calculation is going to be spread out of a longer life expectancy. So small amount, less tax, and that's a pretty good thing. So we like that. So those are the big things for this week. Closing thought here, just say consistent and persistent. I didn't write that down, but that's something that's come up in a couple discussions here that I think we mentioned a little bit last week as well. The small ball and doing those little things every day. Been listening to a little Jocko Willink, and his emphasis on discipline that kind of gets you started. The motivation that comes and goes when you're feeling good. You can't count on it, but the discipline of doing those little things every day is important. And that message has popped up on one or two things over the course of my week here, so I thought I'd mention it again. So with that, the week's almost over. I'm ready to get out of here, and we'll see y'all next week.